Hello and welcome. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran.
And I'm Munmun Bhattacharya.
It's just after 8 p.m. in New Delhi or 9:30 in the morning in Washington, D.C. And you're watching a special broadcast here on DD India. We're calling it Biden in White House.
Absolutely. It's less than 40 hours to go before the US President-elect Joe Biden's inauguration as the 46th President of the United States of America. And here we are kicking off our most extensive and comprehensive coverage of Joe Biden's inauguration as the next US President. With a 2-hour program today, and this is just the beginning of what is going to be a coverage spanning several hours over the next few days on Doordarshan's international channel DD India. We are bringing to you all that you need to know about Biden's path to the White House, and over the next 2 hours, we will get you the latest from our reporters on the ground, tracking every development for you from coast to coast.
Also, incisive analysis from our guests and a 360-degree perspective on the issues at hand. All that and much more coming up over the next 2 hours. But first, as always, the headlines we're tracking at this hour.
The United States gears up for Biden-Harris inauguration on Wednesday. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris to take oath at a ceremony at West Front of US Capitol on the 20th of January.
Joe Biden will receive a traditional presidential escort from the 15th Street in Washington, D.C. to the White House. He will participate in a socially distanced pass-in review with members of the military on the Capitol's East Front. Attendance will be sharply curtailed due to the coronavirus pandemic.
US President-elect Joe Biden nominates 20 Indian Americans, including 13 women, to key positions in his administration days before his swearing in.
Biden announces an ambitious goal of inoculating 100 million Americans with COVID-19 vaccine in the first 100 days of his administration. All schools from kindergarten to class 8 to reopen by the end of April.
And DD India gets you an extensive coverage of the US swearing-in ceremony as it happens. Watch live reports by correspondents on the ground all through the event. Get news, views and analysis from our experts.
Right, let's begin our special broadcast.
So let's begin the mega coverage with a preview of what our coverage is all about, what we will cover, how and who all will join us. Our coverage will continue for the next 3 days until after Biden is sworn in.
Right, on Tuesday, 19th January, we'll be live from 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. On Wednesday, 20th January, we'll be with you from 8 p.m. to 1 a.m. And on Thursday, 21st January, we continue our rolling coverage from 6 a.m. to noon. So it's 4 days in all of the comprehensive coverage of the Biden inauguration. You sure don't want to miss any of it.
Absolutely, that's not all. A full complement of reporters will get you the latest from the ground in the US. Kate Fisher, Nick Harper and Nina Maria Potts. They will get you all the action from Washington, D.C.
Also, a galaxy of guests will join us from India and the US. Ambassador Arun Singh, Dr. G. Balachandran and Dr. Sarala Gopalan, the uncle and aunt of Kamala Harris. And joining us from the US will be Professor W.P.S. Sidhu and Seema Sirohi. We also spoke to former US diplomat Nisha Biswal, celebrity chef Vikas Khanna, former Norway Minister Erik Solheim, and journalist Nicola Smith, who had this to say about what a Biden in the White House means for the world. Take a listen.
See quite a fundamental shift in style. The past four years have been very unpredictable on the foreign policy front.
Biden brings extraordinary capabilities, experience, and steady hands.
He's expected to restart multilateralism, to bring the United States back to a huge number of global conventions and compacts.
I think it's amazing. It's just brilliant. it's a big shift happening globally.
And let's now take you through the events planned for the Biden inauguration. On the 18th of January, you'll see that is today in the US, Biden will celebrate the Martin Luther King Jr. Day. It is a national holiday and occasion to volunteer for a cause. It is observed on the third Monday of January every year. That's how the inaugural week starts for Biden.
Right, and on 19th January, Biden will pay a tribute to those who died due to COVID-19. He will join the Americans in a lighting ceremony around the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. Church bells would be rung in a moment of unity and remembrance.
And on the 20th of January, the swearing-in ceremony takes place on the west side of Capitol Hill, the seat of the U.S. legislature. First, Kamala Harris will take the oath, followed by Joe Biden. And there will be an inauguration speech after that. Biden will take part in a pass-in review at the east side of the Capitol Hill. And then he will go to Arlington Cemetery, where he will lay a wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldier. And finally, he will be escorted from the 15th Street to the White House, and it will be followed by a virtual parade.
But that's not all. Biden and Harris will take part in a 90-minute televised show. We'll broadcast it live from 7 a.m. or 01:30 GMT on Thursday, 21st January. Hollywood actor Tom Hanks will host that show.
And that definitely is going to be, Ramesh, the icing on the cake for all us viewers. Let's now quickly go across to my colleague in Washington, D.C. Kate Fisher is joining us. Good morning to you, Kate, there in Washington, D.C. Is the run-up to the inauguration day this time around looking extremely different from what we've seen in the past in the U.S.?
Absolutely. This is unprecedented. We've seen nothing like this in Washington ahead of an inauguration. In fact, we've really seen nothing like this in Washington, D.C., full stop. People can remember that after the 9/11 terrorist attacks, there was a huge security presence in the capital city. But this is completely different. There are up to 20,000 National Guard troops who are armed. They are guarding checkpoints like the one behind me across streets throughout the centre of Washington, D.C. Everywhere you go, you can see them. They're patrolling, they're guarding. They have these big armoured vehicles as well, and these roadblocks across the city. And people who live here can't obviously drive around. They can't also use the metro or the buses. They can't go to the National Mall, the big long green park in the centre of Washington where all the monuments are, and where usually at the time of inauguration Americans would come to celebrate their new president. Well, that's all been closed down, shut off by fences. The White House also surrounded by fences, the Capitol surrounded by fences. This is really a very strange experience at the moment. Washington, D.C. does not feel like Washington, D.C., and it certainly doesn't feel like the capital city of a country that is about to welcome a new president.
Right, and Kate, very quickly, let's talk a bit about the man of the hour, Joe Biden. Where is he? What is he up to? And how different will this inauguration be from the previous ones? Because we are given to understand that Trump will not be attending the inauguration.
That's right. Again, a huge break with precedent. The sitting president, the incumbent, not attending the new president's inauguration. We're told that he will be leaving Washington early on Wednesday morning before those ceremonies begin. Partly, I think, because this is the last time he'll be able to use Air Force One, the president's aeroplane, and he wants to get to Florida, and he stops being able to use that at midday on Wednesday, and he will be therefore flying on that aeroplane down to his residence in Florida, Mar-a-Lago, on Wednesday morning. We understand there will be some kind of event at the airport before he leaves, at the air base, Joint Base Andrews, where the presidential aeroplane is kept. Some invited guests of his will be there to see him off. But that's an incredibly different situation from 4 years ago, where Barack and Michelle Obama welcomed Donald and Melania Trump at the steps of the White House, welcomed them into the home with open arms, even though there had been a huge amount of bad blood between the two. Donald Trump, of course, suggesting that Barack Obama was not a true American. Yet they still welcomed him to the White House. That is not happening this time.
Yes.
President Trump will be in Florida before Joe Biden becomes president here in Washington, D.C. Joe Biden said that Donald Trump not attending his inauguration ceremony is one of the few things that the two men actually agree upon. As for what's happening today, it is Martin Luther King Day, where the man is celebrated across America, often by people doing good work in their community. And today, that is what Joe Biden will be doing. He'll be helping out at a charity in Philadelphia. As far as the president, President Trump, we've been told, as we've been told for the past few weeks, on his advisory schedule, that he will be making lots of calls and having lots of meetings.
Absolutely. So Joe Biden there trying to send out a message of unity and solidarity, and that's how he's chosen the events for the inaugural week. Stay with us, Kate. Let me introduce our guest now. Joining us is Professor WPS Sidhu. He's a professor at NYU School of Professional Studies, Center for Global Affairs, leading the UN specialization. I welcome you, Professor Sidhu. A quick word from you on your thoughts on the way this inauguration event is going to shape up, considering that there is unprecedented security. Washington, D.C. and 50 state capitals now resemble a fortress, and people can't board the trains, they can't board buses. Those who have any degree of suspicion around them, they are being rounded up, and Donald Trump won't be present in the inauguration event.
Yes, indeed. This is an inauguration like no other, and while it's a cliche to say that this is unique and unlike any other inauguration, in this case it's absolutely correct. Not only do you have, in some ways the capital of world democracy under lockdown, but you literally are going to have this event 2 weeks after a serious coup was attempted as well. So I think there's lots of unprecedented dynamics and dimensions to this, which we have simply not seen before. And it is going to be, certainly there are going to be no crowds, or very few, and it's going to be socially distanced, partly because of COVID, and certainly also because of the threat which is being perceived. And of course, as your reporter has mentioned, there will be the absence of the outgoing president as well. And perhaps this is for the first time in over 200 years that this kind of tradition has been broken. I'd be curious to see if another tradition has also been broken by this transition, and that is that the outgoing president leaves an envelope for the incoming president, just wishing them well, and despite the bitterest of contestations, that has happened. But it'll be curious to see whether that's likely to happen in this particular instance. And certainly, Donald Trump has proven to be a very sore loser right till the very end.
That gives me a perfect segue into my question to you, Kate. Kate, help our viewers understand, people watching this broadcast in India and around the world, how would you describe the Trump legacy, and what might it mean for the Biden in the White House over the next 4 hours? Because this was a bitterly contested election. It's divided the US like never before. So Trump legacy and Biden presidency going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. The country is incredibly divided, despite the fact we have a new president incoming. Nearly half of the population did not vote for him. So it is going to be very difficult for Joe Biden to try to unify a country that also is in several crises at the moment. He also needs to find a way to vaccinate everybody against the coronavirus. He also needs to find a way to try to save the American economy. and while he's doing this, try to win over the people that are such huge supporters of Donald Trump that they were incited to come here in Washington and storm the Capitol building. So it's a very tough task ahead of Joe Biden. He has a lot of work to do. As for Donald Trump's legacy, it really depends your political beliefs. If you are a strong supporter of Donald Trump, you believe he did fantastic things for the country, and you are devastated that you believe that the election was stolen from him. So his legacy is actually that he's left millions of Americans believing that their electoral system is not safe. But he has also done things like lower taxes and so on, which has pleased a lot of his supporters. However, I think in the last few weeks, his legacy has been tainted somewhat. Clearly, people who didn't support him in the first place are appalled by what happened. But even those that did have support for him, some of them now are abhorred by what happened at the Capitol. You saw the likes of Liz Cheney, a Republican member of the House, Dick Cheney's daughter,
Yes.
voting to impeach President Trump. So there are those that no longer feel that his legacy is as strong as it could have been, and certainly members of his staff have left the White House. He is a lot more isolated than he was before, and perhaps that will lead some to believe that his legacy is more toxic than perhaps it would have been before the events of January the 6th.
Indeed.
Absolutely,
Kate Fisher in DC, thank you for now. We'll keep coming back to you the next couple of hours. And Professor Sindhu, do stay on. Munmun, I believe we have some more information coming up for our guests and our viewers around the world.
Yes. So let me bring in my colleague now. Abhishek Mahajan has some more information to share with you on the Biden inauguration. Yes, Abhishek.
Right, we'll try to connect with Abhishek in just a minute. I'm told we've lost the connection with Abhishek in the news pit, but we wanted to share some more information about the inauguration ceremony that's been planned and how different it might be from previous inaugurations, Munmun, and we are hoping to connect with Abhishek in just a moment, actually.
Absolutely. Professor Sidhu, if I may come to you for the time being, if you are with us, on the point that Kate left on, she was talking about what some believe could be a toxic legacy that Trump may be leaving behind after his first term as a US president. So, your thoughts on whether there could be even more trouble for Trump waiting in the times to come, considering that though he is the only US president to be impeached twice, there is a Senate impeachment trial that is waiting for him.
Certainly, not only does he have the unique disqualification, one might argue, of being impeached twice, but if this actually goes forward, he may actually get disqualified from holding any public or political office in future if it's successful, and that also means that his ambitions of returning in 2024 are going to vaporize in any case. In addition to that, it's also quite possible that you may have individual states, New York, for example, which may also launch a whole series of cases against the Trump organization. And you can see that's already starting to happen. For example, New York State is starting to cut all ties with the Trump organization, for example. So there's certainly going to be a very, as you use the word very rightly, toxic legacy of Trump that unfortunately the Biden-Harris administration will also have to deal with as they go forward. So this is unfortunately a trend which is likely to continue. One other element there, that while Trump may have left the White House or will leave the White House in a couple of days, Trumpism is here to stay.
Is it, Professor Sidhu, considering the kind of backlash that the 6th of January events have led to? Because there are people who are now asking whether some members of the Republicans would want to take that political ideology that Trump represents, called Trumpism, forward anymore.
Well, I think even there's a clear divide because, and there's truly a split within the Republican Party as to those who want to go back to, sort of, if you like, right of center, but not the extreme right. But there are others, and they're the ones who've actually been leading the opposition to the vote count, for example. Ted Cruz, Hollenbach, among others. They see themselves as the logical successors of Trump. So Trumpism, unfortunately, is very much here to stay. And that's something that the Biden-Harris team is also going to have to contend with and be challenged by.
Absolutely. Then the onus is even more on the Biden-Harris team as far as uniting the country is concerned. But let me again try and go across to my colleague Abhishek Mahajan with the information to share on the Biden inauguration. Yes, Abhishek.
Well, thank you so much, Ramesh and Munmun. So what happens on the day Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are sworn in, from COVID-19 protocols to security concerns to an appearance from Lady Gaga? A lot will take place. Let's try to find out through the video wall as to what are the arrangements like. Let's talk about the security first. What will and how the security will be. So presidential inaugurations typically involve detailed security plans, and planned 90-minute train ride by Joe Biden and team from his offices in Delaware to Washington has been shelved, and we all know the reason, because of these security concerns. And Biden has asked Barack Obama's counterterrorism advisor Lisa Monaco to work as temporary advisor on security for the inauguration day, that is on 20th. So Washington DC already under a state of emergency. We all know that amid riots at the Capitol Hill, and it's under lockdown too now till the inauguration. So Secret Service has taken command of the security plans. It's an unprecedented security, they are saying, and backed up by some 15,000 National Guard troops in addition to thousands of police officers. So these are the kind of security arrangements that have been put in place. So will Trump be there? Customary for the outgoing president to watch the next in line be sworn in, but no, this year the outgoing president Donald Trump will be a no-show. We all know the reasons. So if you go back to the history, only 3 presidents, John Adams in 1800, John Quincy Adams in 1829, and Andrew Johnson way back in 1869 chose to sit out their successors' inaugurations, and no one in this century. So inauguration during COVID-19, how will COVID change this year's inauguration? So celebration size will be extremely limited, and Biden's team has urged Americans to avoid traveling to the capital, and Biden, Kamala Harris will still take their oaths in front of the US Capitol overlooking the mall. And viewing stands constructed along the parade route taken down, and 2 mile long, which is 3.2 kilometer National Mall Park will also be closed to the public. And if you go back to the past, up to 200,000 tickets were up for grabs to attend official ceremony, but no, this year only around 1,000 tickets will be available. That's because of the COVID-19 pandemic, but still be a pass and review ceremony, a traditional part of the peaceful transfer of power. And instead of usual parade down Pennsylvania Avenue to the White House, virtual parade across the US will take place. And Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and their spouses to be escorted to the White House by the members of the military, including a band and drum corps. And most interesting, who will be performing? Lady Gaga and Jennifer Lopez to perform at Joe Biden's inauguration. And Lady Gaga, we all know, we had seen her at the Joe Biden's campaign too. She will sing the national anthem on that day, that is on 20th. Moving on, Foo Fighters, John Legend and Bruce Springsteen are also in the lineup and will offer remote performances. Also, if we move forward, Eva Longoria and Kerry Washington will introduce segments of the event, and everyone's favorite guy, Tom Hanks, will host a 90-minute primetime TV special celebrating Joe Biden's inauguration called Celebrating America. And also, if you talk about other performers, they include Justin Timberlake, John Bon Jovi. He also performed at Barack Obama's 2009 inauguration, Demi Lovato and Ann Clemens. So Justin Timberlake and Ann Clemens, we all know, wrote a song together during lockdown, Better Days, and they will be performing this song too on the 20th. He had put that out on social media, that is Instagram. So Ramesh and Munmul, that's all we have for now from here. Back to you.
Thank you, Abhishek. And as Abhishek was mentioning, COVID-19 is #1 priority for incoming President Joe Biden. And who better than Nisha Biswal, President of USIBC, talk about Biden's priorities. Now, she is a former American diplomat. She spoke to us from Washington, D.C. a short while ago. And I began by asking her about Biden's COVID-19 action plan. Take a listen.
Well, even during the transition as president-elect, the president-elect has made COVID-19 his top priority and focus, with daily meetings and briefings and strategy sessions that have been focused on, the different elements of the pandemic, including on the vaccine and vaccine rollout, including on, the R&D into new and existing treatments, and an overall policy on logistics and coordination. He has a very powerful and capable team that he has assembled to take on these challenges, and they have been active and engaged already. He has already announced certain measures with respect to the vaccine rollout, as well as an action plan. So I suspect that for the president-elect, for the vice president-elect, all things will start with making sure that we help America and the world really get a handle on the COVID-19 pandemic. And I think that that is important to everything else that flows, including the economic challenges that have beset the country as well.
The second priority for Biden is economic recovery. Now, how do you think he will, chart his course over the next maybe few months into his presidency, and what might he be looking at specifically going forward?
Well, as you know, the president-elect, even before coming into office, has released his blueprint or his stimulus plan for the American recovery. It is something that we at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and U.S. India Business Council have welcomed. And I do think that getting Americans back to work, getting economic activity to resume in a safe way, and this is again where the vaccine and COVID response becomes so critically important. But also recognizing that for America to recover, both economically and from the pandemic, it's going to also require leadership on the global stage in helping our friends and partners around the world also boost their economies and contain the virus. And I see the Biden administration coming in very strong on those fronts, and they will have a willing partner from industry, and they will have a close collaboration with the U.S. Chamber and with the U.S. India Business Council on that count.
Indeed. Let's talk a bit now about Vice President-elect Kamala Harris. How do you see the elevation of Kamala Harris as the Vice President-elect coming from the Indian American community as she is? And what do you make of the Indian American community in general in terms of their growing profile in U.S. domestic politics?
Well, first of all, let me just say there's so much pride and excitement about the ascendancy of Kamala Harris and her upcoming inauguration as the first woman Vice President of the United States of America. As you know, she was a presidential contender in her own right, and comes with a very, very accomplished background and just an incredible story as the daughter of immigrants. Her mother, who hailed from India and came and really carved out a life for herself here in America and raised her daughters. Her father, who came from Jamaica, and the ability of Kamala Harris to straddle the African American community, the Indian American community, and really see the both aspirations and the incredible strengths that America gains from her immigrant citizens, and so I see that as just something that has really excited certainly the Indian American community, but really all immigrants and all people of color, because they see in her the road to their own path for engaging the larger American civic life and political life, and I think it's an extraordinary moment.
Right. And finally, Ms. Biswal, your thoughts on the way forward in India-US ties. What would the relationship look like under President Biden in the White House in terms of opportunities, challenges, or for that matter, irritants in the ties?
Well, first of all, I think the U.S.-India relationship, Ramesh, as you well know, has been going from strength to strength and has been rising in importance over these past decades. And we can say that, you know, under the first visit of Bill Clinton to India, under the presidency of George Bush, as he sought to really elevate the partnership and brokered the civil nuclear agreement between the United States and India, under Barack Obama, where we saw just a very deep engagement between the United States and India, between our leaders, but also across a whole of government effort to strengthen and deepen our ties. And that is partly because of a recognition that the U.S.-India relationship is more than a government-to-government relationship. It really touches across every aspect of both of our countries and our societies. And you saw that in the Trump administration as well, with all of the various challenges that we're focused on right now. The U.S.-India partnership is one that was also prioritized by the outgoing president and his team. But Joe Biden brings a particular relevance, a particular expertise and long-standing experience on India, and his team does as well. And I think that is reflected in the fact that in the early days of the transition, one, you've seen individuals who have been named to very important positions, from Secretary designate Tony Blinken and Deputy Secretary Wendy Sherman to National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, Deputy National Security Advisor John Feiner, and certainly, as we now know, the Asia czar at the White House, who is going to really be focusing on the Indo-Pacific, Kurt Campbell. All of these individuals bring just an enormous experience on the U.S.-India corridor, and will be supporting and informing the President-elect's own deep experience through his Senate days and into his time as Vice President on the U.S.-India corridor. And certainly our Vice President-elect will also engage that. I do think that there are some very important issues where the U.S.-India partnership will be critically important. Certainly we know the strategic and security partnership, which has been the bedrock of the partnership, and particularly right now with some of the regional geopolitical challenges that both countries are dealing with, and that partnership will continue to be very, very important. But also, on the big challenges that the president-elect has identified on COVID-19, on economic recovery, we know that the US-India partnership is going to be very relevant. And then on climate, where Secretary Kerry, who made an unprecedented, I think, 6 or 7 visits to India during his tenure, where he will be taking the helm on climate, and he was very instrumental in the US-India climate partnership on the repair. So I see a path that is going to be extremely ambitious, consequential, and intense in the relationship, and it's going to broaden this relationship to all of the big issues that our two countries are leading on in ways that not only benefit the Indian people and the American people, but that really bring the leadership and the partnership on the global stage that we know that the US-India relationship is capable of and really needs to step into in this unprecedented era that we are in.
All right, on that note, Ms. Biswal, thank you so much for making time for us on DD India. Thank you, appreciate it.
It's my pleasure, and good luck to you as well as we view these events over the coming week.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So that was Nisha Biswal for you. And now moving on to Biden's remaining priorities. Racial equity is one. He wants to close the racial wealth gap, invest in Black and Latino entrepreneurs. Policing and criminal justice reform is also the next one. A nationwide ban on chokeholds. Remember George Floyd? Create a model use of force standard. Offer second chances to prisoners. An educational opportunity regardless of race. Perhaps that's also prodding Donald Trump to now consider clemency for a lot of prisoners. Carbon pollution free power sector by 2035 is the climate change priority. 100% clean energy economy. That too is a priority of Biden administration. Net zero emissions by 2050. Joe Biden wants to build a sustainable green economy. He wants to re-enter the United States into the Paris Climate Accord as well. Let's talk a bit now about some more of Biden's priorities. He's listed 4: COVID-19, economic recovery, racial equity, and climate change. These are the headline priorities of the Biden administration.
Right, and next we ask, what will Biden do first? Well, he will tackle the COVID-19 pandemic on a war footing, and he says he will rejoin the Paris Climate Agreement.
Let's talk a bit about Biden's number one priority, COVID-19. Biden's COVID-19 agenda includes 100 million shots in 100 days, a free COVID-19 vaccine for all, wear a mask for 100 days, and reopen schools from kindergarten to the class 8 by the end of April. And he's also tweeted about the advantages that this will bring in for American society. His second priority is economic recovery. He has announced a new economic stimulus package. It is worth nearly $2 trillion, $1.9 trillion to be precise. He wants to give $2,000 per month to people, enhanced unemployment insurance, create jobs, minimum wage of $15 per hour, affordable health care, universal paid sick days or sick leave, 12 weeks of paid family and medical leave would also be there. Besides that, there's also focus on expanding affordable housing and revision of taxes.
Right, My colleague Kate Fisher rejoins us from Washington, D.C. Also with us is Professor Sidhu. Kate, if I can start with you now. COVID-19 pandemic, economic recovery, two important priorities for President-elect Joe Biden. In your estimation, how crucial will be the first few weeks of his presidency? Because these two issues have agitated many a mind in the US for many weeks and months now.
Absolutely, they will be vital. Hundreds of thousands of Americans are dying from this, and Joe Biden has gone throughout his campaign and now into just before he takes office, telling the American people that it is the most important thing for him and for the country to get ahead of. He gave a speech last week explaining in more detail what he intends to do. As you say, his first 100 days, he says he will get 100 million vaccinations out and into the arms of American people. He wants to see everybody in America wearing a face mask for those first 100 days, and he's going to try to reopen as many schools as possible. And he's not just saying these things, the kind of the headlines, he's also giving details about how he intends this to happen. He's talked about creating mass vaccination hubs for people to come and get their jabs. Also sending mobile vaccination units out into the many remote rural parts of the United States where there perhaps aren't medical health facilities very nearby. So he says, got plans, ideas, and he's going to start on them come Wednesday afternoon. So yeah, this is going to be a vital, not just for Joe Biden and for judgment on his presidency, but also for the country, because so many Americans are dying from this, and at the moment the vaccination rollout has not been terribly successful.
Professor Sidhu, if I may come to you now on whether you think with such a massive agenda now in front of Joe Biden, he putting out his priorities very clearly and tackling the COVID-19 pandemic being the topmost priority, will America be able to finally turn the corner? We've heard this phrase very often during the Trump administration that we will turn the corner, but the corner never turned. Now do you think the corner will be turned finally?
I think the turning of the corner will begin, but it's not likely to end before at least early 2022. Simple fact is, even if you go, it's a simple back of the envelope calculation. Even if you're able to do 100 million vaccinations in 100 days, which frankly already seems quite unlikely given what we've seen with the rollout so far. If you were to extrapolate that out to the year, it would certainly take till the end of this year for all Americans to be vaccinated. And as we know, that alone is not adequate, because unless everybody globally is vaccinated, this concern and the threat of this pandemic and virus in some ways still remains. So it's going to be a Herculean task, there's no doubt about it. But also, I think there's going to be lots of challenges to Biden in that context as well. Not the least of which is, as you very rightly pointed out, the divide, the political and social divide that we've seen emerge very, very strongly. It's one thing to make a pronouncement of everybody wearing masks, but you will also anticipate defiance of that proclamation. So it'll be interesting to see how the Biden administration is able to bridge those gaps. And of course, even before this vaccine, you had a whole anti-vaxxer movement, which the Biden administration will also have to contend with. So it's still a long way to go. I think Biden has done very well to prioritize the COVID-19, both in terms of the medical challenge, but also the economic recovery, because without that, nothing else is likely to be possible. But to think that this is going to happen within the first 100 days is entirely unlikely. I would say it probably go into early 2022, if not middle of 2022.
Absolutely. Kate, if I may come to you now, the other big priority of the Biden administration is going to be economic revival. He must be hoping that he'll get the required support of Republicans to get that package through, as also the COVID relief, because COVID relief is also very much part of the $1.9 trillion package that he proposes. How easy or difficult would that be?
Yeah, that is going to be a big challenge for him. He announced that $1.9 trillion package just last week. Around $20 billion of that is to go towards this mass vaccination program. But more of those dollars are to go directly to help American people with more stimulus checks, help for small businesses, and so on. And his argument to Republicans is that, yes, it's a lot of money, but this is a huge problem, and we need to throw huge amounts of money at it to try to solve it. I think he said that he would like to see bipartisan support for this. He would like to see Republicans joining Democrats in passing this legislation, but he will have enough Democrats in the House and the Senate to pass it without them if necessary. He can invoke a procedure called budget reconciliation, which allows the Senate to pass something with just the simple majority. But he said that he does not want to do that if he can, and he would like to ensure that Republicans join him on this, because he knows how important it is for the whole country, and he wants to feel that everybody is working on this together to solve this huge problem that's a national problem, not a Democratic problem or a Republican problem. It's a worldwide problem, and he wants to see everybody come together to solve it. But whether he gets that, we'll have to see. And also, at the same time as this is going through Congress, we've also got the impeachment trial of Donald Trump, the second one. So the Senate is going to have to work out how it can get Joe Biden's legislation on his COVID relief packages going at the same time as hearing evidence in an impeachment trial.
Indeed. And very quickly, Professor Sidhu, do you get the sense that domestic issues will preoccupy Biden in the White House, and that might leave him with little time to focus on foreign policy challenges staring at the US in the face, be it China, the Indo-Pacific, West Asia? One can go on and on. So do you get the sense that he will be preoccupied, and that might be to the advantage of countries in the region and beyond?
Absolutely right, Ramesh. I couldn't agree with you more on your assessment of that. I think even though he wants to correct a lot of the foreign policy, shall we say, misdemeanors of the Trump administration. For example, pulling out of WHO, the Paris Agreement, approach to China, the allies, among others. His priority clearly is going to be domestic,
right,
and is going to be COVID in the first instance, which is why I think it's very interesting that he has got such a strong bench of foreign and security and economic experts who are likely to be taking forward the agenda at the international level. So, as you heard from Nisha Biswal, it really is in many ways an A team. And a couple of people that I might mention there, which have not been mentioned, is also Bill Burns as the head of the CIA.
Right.
Given that he was at one point of time the senior diplomat, senior most diplomat, is an important element for countries like India, which are very much concerned about issues like terrorism in the region and broadly writ as well. Right. Similarly, John Kerry, once a presidential contender himself, Secretary of State, is now also going to be pushing and promoting climate change. So we have quite heavy hitters as well. But you're absolutely right that Biden himself may be less visible than you might expect.
Indeed. Professor Sidhu and Kate Fisher, thank you so much for joining us on this special broadcast. Thank you once again for your time. Appreciate it. Right, so we discussed two priorities, COVID-19 and economic recovery. The third priority for him is climate change. Now, I sat down with Erik Solheim a short while ago to talk about Biden's focus on environment and climate. Now, Solheim is a former minister of Norway and a former head of the UN Environment Programme. I began by asking him about how he views Biden's decision to rejoin the Paris Agreement. Take a listen.
Absolutely, an entire world will welcome that. Remember, every other nation, being it India or China or Europe, is in the Paris Agreement. So, of course, it will be a huge thank you, welcome. We really want to work with you from the entire world when he joins the Paris Agreement. But we should also remember that the main focus for climate action now is not with politics, it's with business. And we need major action from top business, the big companies in the United States, as well as similar companies in the rest of the world.
Mr. Solheim, you're from Norway, and Norway, like most countries around the world, including India for that matter, are vulnerable to climate change. As a Norwegian who is interested in this issue, and you have addressed these issues in your earlier portfolios as a politician and a minister in the government and in the UN system, how do you see climate change? Is it, as some say, a clear and present danger for Norwegians and the other Scandinavian countries in the world? Do you see it as a security issue? Because some people in the US say that it's as much a security issue as anything else.
I see climate change both as an enormous threat to humanity, a threat multiplier in many ways, but also as an enormous opportunity for creating jobs and prosperity for people. Starting with the threats here in Norway, because we are much focused on the Arctic. We see the top degrees, much higher temperatures in the Arctic than there has been in any time after we started recording the temperature. And the ice in the Arctic is melting at a very, very high speed. And this may even impact the huge Russian tundra with great international impact. In India, for instance, of course, the melting of the ice in the Himalayas with major impact on Yamuna or Ganga or so many of the main rivers and waterways of India is a major concern. And of course, Pacific Islands or the Maldives are threatened by climate change. So there are many threats, but climate change is also a fantastic opportunity. In the United States of America, there is now 5 times more jobs in the solar industry than there is in coal. In India, we see one solar project coming up after the other, huge progress, and this is creating cleaner jobs, better jobs, in many cases better paid jobs, and a new way to prosperity. This is, of course, also why all the main companies of the world, the big multilaterals, they are all now embracing climate action as a way to create prosperity for people, jobs for the employees, but of course also value for the shareholders.
You mentioned about the Himalayas and the Ganga. In that context, how do you see India's performance in ensuring climate justice in India and around the world, in terms of meeting the set targets, in terms of giving an impetus or a push to renewable energy, including piloting the International Solar Alliance, and also in terms of phasing out single-use plastics and so on? So how do you see India's performance in this field so far?
As a frequent visitor to India over the last 2 or 3 decades, I see a huge positive shift in Indian environment policies, and I want to give credit for that to Prime Minister Modi. Of course, many others have contributed, but he has shifted the debate from the old debate, which was, do we Indians want to develop, or do we want to take care of Mother Earth? And then, of course, nearly all Indians wanted to develop. Now people can see that there is no such choice to be had. India can develop very, very fast, can have 8% economic growth, can be one of the real leaders of international economic growth, but at the same time take care of the environment. And the main reason for this is, of course, that solar and wind and the other renewables are not cheaper than coal everywhere in the world. India, by the way, has the lowest price on solar of any place on Mother Earth. So you can do the shift to the green technologies and green energies and create more jobs, not less jobs. In the past, too, there was one way to development, and that was first you pollute and later you clean up. Now we can walk on 2 feet at the same time, the ecological and the environment feet, and we can move very, very fast. And I see the International Solar Alliance, and I see all the main solar installments in India. Remind yourself, India has the first all-solar airport in Kochi. It has the first all-solar rail station in Assam, and India has 3 out of the 5 biggest individual solar plants in the world. So I see a huge positive green shift coming from India, which will impact on Indians, but is also very positive for the rest of the world.
Indeed. And going back to Biden in the US, now he has signaled his intent by nominating John Kerry as his special envoy on climate change. How do you see this decision of his?
He has really put in place what I think all environmentalists consider the dream team, the green dream team. John Kerry as the international climate envoy, Gina McCarthy as the domestic climate or environment czar, and then extremely competent green people as Minister of Energy at the Environment Protection Agency, as Minister of Interior. Basically in all top positions, people come with huge credentials as environmental reformers. So this is the best team America could dream of. Now, of course, the United States and Kerry need to reach out, in particular to China as the #1 partner, to Europe, to India, and to all other key partners to make sure that we get a concerted global action. But in my view, this is the chance of a generation. Never there has been a time where the United States, Europe, China, and India, all the 4 main actors, were working fast in the environment direction, all at the same time. So again, United States with Biden, this is the chance of the generation. Let's grab it with both our hands and move fast.
Absolutely. And finally, Mr. Solheim, looking ahead to the COP26 to be held in Glasgow in later this year, what are your expectations from those deliberations, those talks?
I think at this historical turning point, business is much more important than the climate talks. And what's really exciting now, seeing in the US, is how all the big companies, Amazon has promised to purchase 100,000 electrical vehicles to create that market. Apple is investing in the biggest windmills in the world in Denmark. And Microsoft has promised to be a zero carbon company by 2030. Adding, it will be a zero plastic company. Adding to all that, they've even made an agreement with Alaska Airlines to compensate for all the emissions from its staff. So the top business companies are well ahead of politics. You see very similar development in India also, where a number of companies like Tata, Mahindra, or others are moving very fast in the green direction. So at this point, yes, climate talks in Glasgow is good, but the main dynamism is coming from the shift in business.
Right. On that note, Mr. Solheim, thank you very much for speaking to us at DD India. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Right, with that, it's time for a very short break. When we come back, we'll have more guests join us to talk about Biden, Harris, and the rise of the Indian American community.
So keep watching DD India. Don't go anywhere. Lots more up ahead.
What is he?